Hey, everybody, this is Al. There's a warning. I have had no sleep, and the coffee in this thermos is caffeinated. So we have a problem, but we're going to be fine. It's a good thing you didn't tune in just a little earlier because Zach was saying all kinds of untoward things. One of the toward things he said was that he can't control time. Well, anyway, I have a few announcements. I'm going to tell you what the phone number is in the Skype handle and hope you'll call. The first caller today, will receive a copy of this book, The Difference is Spreading, 50 Poets on 50 Poems. And all 50 poems can be found in ModPo. And most of the poets, the 50 poets who are doing commentaries, also can be found in ModPo. This is a ModPo book. Yeah, you can get it at the University of Pennsylvania Press or on Amazon or whatever. If you happen to be near Philly, you can come by and have us sign it. Anyway, this is the first caller will get a copy of this book. The number is 610-616-3208. And you can Skype if you prefer not to incur whatever charges are associated with calling that from whatever your plan is overseas. ModPo Pen, 2 N's at the end of Pen. ModPo Pen for Skype, 610-616-3208. And if you call, you get the extra bonus of talking to the amazing Christopher Martin. Okay. So a couple of announcements as we go along. First, I'm going to say hello to everybody who's around. Kate Colby. Hello, Kate Colby.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Kate. Zach, I'm holding up a chapbook that is just out. I think it's just out. Published by Kate Colby. This one right here. Yeah. And it's called Thinking. And thank you, Kate. I think you were responsible for getting me this copy, and I so appreciate it. I'm very excited about it. And there's a good chance that at the end we'll have time, and I'll ask you to read a poem from it if you happen to have a copy nearby. Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Good morning, Al. I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. You're applauding Kate, I think. So nice through the Zoom thing. Dave Poplar, good morning.
Morning.
How are you out there in the Southwest?
I'm good.
Okay, you look a little... No, you don't look tired. You look great, but you seem a little tired. Are you okay?
Yeah, it's 7 a.m. here. So
7 a.m. Appreciate that. Okay, and Max is trying to connect from Berlin, and we'll see him in a few minutes, I hope. Lainey Brown, hello, friend.
Good morning.
How are you?
Happy to be here.
Good. And if I start to doze off, just... bang me with your elbow, your right elbow. Let's practice. No, let's not.
You jumped at that.
Sophia Durose. How dare you? Sophia Durose is here.
Hi.
Now, Sophia has never seen The Wizard of Oz, so if you're in the YouTube chat, I think you should start not talking about the week 3 poems, but by encouraging Sophia to see that film, and you can probably tell her your favorite scenes or favorite quotes.
Wasn't everyone horribly mistreated on that set?
Oh, maybe. Yeah. All right. Tell her why she shouldn't watch it. And so we have other people here. I'm so glad to see them all. Alex is here. Hello, Alex. And Cole. Yep, is here. And Ellen is here. Hello, Ellen. Elan and Sophia Hall is here. And there's a portable mic, so I'm sure we're going to rope them in. Was that the rope them in? Okay, a few announcements. We'll get started talking about our poems. Montreal is next week. ModPo team going to Montreal. The live webcast from Montreal, Quebec is at 6:30, an unusual time for us, 6:30 p.m. local time, which is the same time here as East ET time, same Philly, same New York, same Boston, at 6:30 on Thursday, not Wednesday. It's a special. This is the one time we're doing Thursday. And we'll be at McGill University. And if you haven't already mention to Sophia Durose that you would like to meet us there, please contact us at modpo@writing.upenn.edu. We'd love to see you there. We've heard from a lot of people and certainly plan to come to the webcast, and our friend Amber Rose Johnson, who's a longtime TA but not able to join us this year because she's just beginning her assistant professorship at McGill University. But she will be there, right, Lainey?
That's right. And we'll have more special guests, including Kate Colby, live and in person with us. That's
Kate,
exciting.
Montreal. Oh, that's great.
And Wen.
Wen will be there, and we're going to be going around the city making new ModPo videos because you don't have enough ModPo videos out there. I mean, the ModPo Plus syllabus is already 9 times the size of the main syllabus, so check it out. Okay, couple more quick announcements. We'll get started. This is the week for essay peer review, so essay assignment number 1. A lot of people have posted. Now your job is to go to that subforum for essay 1 and to comment on at least 4 essays. And I went in this morning, and some of the newly posted essays don't have replies, a lot of replies. Most already have. So please do that. That's the only way this works. Humanistic crowdsourcing. If it weren't such a long phrase, I would cheerlead it. Give me an H, give me a U, give me an M, give me a etc. Humanistic crowdsourcing. Hello, Jason, and hello, Max. Hi, guys. Good to see you. Another announcement. There's a thread called Post Your Own Poems. So ModPo is not a creative writing MOOC, but we have a lot of people who submit their poems. So it's called Post Your Own Poems. It's in the general discussion forum. Also in the general discussion forum, you're going to find the ongoing poetry game. So if you're not just like posting if you're non-gaming a poem to post, you're going in to post your own poems. But if you're interested in the ongoing poetry game, which James Ritter has set up, and I think James called us from Los Angeles last week, that's also in the general discussion group. A quick overview of what you can find in the study groups and meetups forum. And I know webcasts are cool because they're live and interactive, and I haven't planned a thing we're about to do in the next mostly 90 minutes. Amazing. And we have Zoom office hours. Amazing. Can you name 5 MOOCs that have such options for live interaction? Can you name 3? Ellen, can you name 2? No, we're really here, even though the videos are old. We're old, but we're live. And alive. Study groups and meetups. There's one just posted. The Moscow people, Moscow ModPo people, the MMPs, they are so excited about organizing. So if you're Moscow or vicinity, or if you're just really in Russian time zone, you might want to join them. There's the ModPo Collage Club that is forming up. Take a look at that. That will be a asynchronous one, not live. There's the New York City group that Mandana Chaffa is reorganizing. There's the Global Study Group, GSG, which has been going on since the pandemic, and they are fantastic, and they've picked some poems. There's the Southern California group. We talked to 2 of them last week during the webcast, and then there's the Vancouver Island group. So please go and join them. Okay? And one last announcement. Make sure, please, that when you go to any Coursera ModPo page, look to the left-hand submenu, the main menu, and click on Resources. Resources. Do it now. Click on Resources, and you'll see a submenu which includes all kinds of really important stuff. Why is such important stuff only available in a submenu? Maybe Ellen can help us solve that problem. It's submenu, but not sub. It's not sub-important. That's where ModPo Plus can be found. That's where the Teaching Resource Center can be found. Teachers, you can teach ModPo, teach with ModPo in your classrooms. It's being done all over the world in high school classrooms in particular. There's the Frequently Asked Questions site that answers all of your questions. And just one more plug from resources, the CCCR syllabus, crowdsourced close reading. What is it? Crowdsourced community close readings. So these are videos, ModPo YouTube videos that people are making without our involvement, and then we post it to CCR. Okay, good. Fantastic. Dave, would you take a look at the webcast subforum today, please? Okay, and the YouTube comment stream, Lainey, please. and Sophia DeRose, please. And is anybody able to click on Twitter X? Does anybody want to click on Twitter X? Max is shaking his head no. Andrew, thank you so much. Andrew and I are the last people on Twitter X. What you're going to do, Andrew, is look. That's not true. I scroll through it. It's horrifying, but there's a lot of people there, a lot of politics there, by the way. And they only feed me the politics that I like, so it's like useless, basically. Although heartwarming sometimes. And when's the last time anybody used the word heartwarming to describe the Twitter sphere? It's Andrew. It's hashtag ModPoLive, and anybody who's posting, that would be you, Ray Maxwell. Hashtag ModPoLive. Okay, cool. 610-616-3208. First caller gets a book. And now what we're going to do is we are going to choose.
There's someone on the phone.
And there's someone on the phone. Okay, hold on, someone on the phone. We are going to take this cup here. Oh. We're going to take this cup here, Max. No, Max can't pick things out of the cup. You're not here. You're in Berlin. Okay, we're going to take this cup and all the names of the people here in the room, including Jason, who just joined us, are in this cup. And I'm going to ask Sophia DeRose to pick a name out of the hat there, the cup, and it's that person who will respond first to the person on the phone. Can you do that, please?
Okay. Dave.
Dave Poplar, you're assigned to answer the first question posed by the caller. And also, Lainey, will you rip off a little piece of paper and add Jason to the cup? Okay, who's on the phone? Chris.
Yes, Al. We have Mona calling from
I'm
Indiana.
sorry, I missed the first name.
Mona. Calling
Mona!
from Indiana.
This is Mona. Mona Mejas? Did I?
Exactly.
Hi, Mona.
Yeah. Mijas.
Hi.
Yes.
Mijas. Hi, Mona. You're such a good.
How are you?
You're such a good citizen of ModPo. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, I don't know what your motivation is. In fact, as I've mentioned maybe too many times, I've just finished writing a book about ModPo and other things, and humanistic crowdsourcing. Give me an H, give me a U. That's what my book's about. And Mona has been crowdsourcing corrections to the Coursera site. That is to say, the Poetry Foundation have changed all their links to poems. And so Mona is helping us figure out what links got broken. And then Sophia's been doing that. And then we're fixing them. So thank you, Mona, for that.
Yeah, I wasn't going through on that just for that purpose. I was actually clicking on them to read.
Imagine
and
that.
it just so happened that they were broken.
Yeah, it just so happened. I mean, if you were the Poetry Foundation, why would you change the links to poems? Chris Martin, what's the answer to that?
Without telling people and warning them?
Without telling people.
I don't know.
Imagine someone hosting a site that's often used, not telling you that they're changing something so basic.
A very well-funded site.
Yeah,
And a
I
very
know,
well.
I know.
Hello, Poetry Foundation people. Hello. Hello. By the way, Poetry Foundation, Mona used to host Poem Talk. They co-hosted it. They sponsored it. Not anymore.
Oh.
They fired us.
Oh, okay.
I got a call one day
Oh,
from the Poetry
okay.
Foundation. You're fired.
But we did have a really lovely visit there.
We
Was
did.
it only a year ago? 2 years ago.
They were very nice. Mona, no, they were. Mona,
Yeah.
you don't want to hear all this blather. Do you want to raise a point about week 3 so Dave Poplar can respond?
Sure. As I said this morning in Sophia's office hour, well, first let me say something to Emma in the chat. I think someone else already responded to her, but Emma said something about not knowing that office hours were for anybody. And someone responded that, yes, they're for everybody. And my first year here, I was afraid of office hours. I was actually afraid to go.
Why?
So, yeah, it's really, really fun. You should jump in.
Great recommendation.
So,
yeah.
that's what I wanted to say.
Oh, Mona, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Dave Poplar.
So yeah, this morning in the chat, I said that I was really questioning why images, and I didn't understand much of it until Dave brought up the Amy Lowell.
Yes, the letter.
I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah, and he read some of that in his office hours the other night, and it kind of helped me understand a little bit. So I appreciated that.
That's really great, Mona. Thank you so much for everything, for being such an activist. Do you have a car out there in Indiana?
Do I have a what?
A car, an automobile.
Yeah, I have a car.
Great. Would you get in that car someday and drive east and hang out with us here?
I'm going to in February.
Oh, yeah, she's coming for Patty Smith.
You're coming for Patty Smith? How did you get a seat at Patty Smith? Oh, I just blew it.
gave
We're
her
talking
one.
about Patty Smith, and there's going to be more. If you want to see Patty Smith, you're A, out of luck, and B, contact Sophia DeRose. Mona, we're going to see you at Patty Smith. Wow.
Yes, and I think I contacted Sophia like the day I saw the email.
Yeah.
So that means my announcement about Patty has reached all the ModPo people.
Yeah, it was like a Saturday at 10
Hey,
p.m.
Lainey Brown, why isn't Patty Smith in the ModPo syllabus?
We're going to have to fix that.
I think since you're the coordinator of the whole enterprise, it should
All
be
right.
easy.
Okay.
All in favor of Patty Smith being added? Raise your hand. I'm getting a snap from Arizona. Okay, good. Chris Martin is into it. Okay,
I'm raising my hand. over here.
Mona, thank you for calling. Lots of love to you. Get in your car before February, and thanks for calling. Appreciate it. Dave
All right.
Poplar. Okay, Mona, have a good day. Dave
Thank you.
Poplar, what the heck? You were chosen randomly out of a cup, and Mona was addressing you. Would you want to say either something about Amy Lowell and why that's a clarifying piece? It's an unusual poem for ModPo. And secondly, something about office hours?
First about Mona. Mona's great. She comes to my office hours all the time. She really adds a lot to everything. So I'm glad that she's coming. And thank you for the shout out, Mona. And what I was talking about during office hours was actually something I printed out when I took the in-person course in 2010. So I actually printed this out September 17th, 2010. And this is what it is. So it's basically the introduction that the preface Amy Lowell wrote for Tendencies in Modern Poetry. And it goes through the tenets of the manifesto of Imagism and explains each one and gives some commentary. And there's also an addendum by Timothy Matterer that talks about Imagism and how it was a marketing strategy. And there was some machinations between Lowell and Pound about who could control it. So it's all really interesting. It gives you a big picture view of Imagism and the movement and what it was trying to do. So I'm glad it was helpful for her.
Well said. Amy Lowell was a promoter of Imagism. Some people were angry at her for going immediately to a kind of marketing strategy. And I guess what I want to do is open the floor, and we're going to get 3 people picked from the cup for this, please, Sophia. I want to open the floor, let's maybe even 4 people, open the floor to this question. Looking at HD's poem Sea Rose, right? Sea Rose, which is held up as a classically good instance of Imagism at its birth. You know, it's like one of the first great Imagist poems. And the question's going to be this, following from what Dave just said about Amy Lowell and Amy's feeling, like an aesthetic feeling, to be sure, a radical aesthetic feeling, like we should be doing this kind of radical condensation, and this kind of focus, and this kind of precise word choice as opposed to Victorian gloop. And when HD did that, she immediately fell into what some people would call the trap of creating a programmatic statement in a poem that was meant to be anti-programmatic. So I'd love for 4 people just to comment on Sea Rose as 2 things. I think Sophia Hall brought this up. Somebody brought this up in our class. It's both an Imagist poem in the sense that it is just about the sea rose, but it is also about what you can do in a poem to make it just about a sea rose, if you know what I mean. So it's got a meta quality. So who are the four?
Jason, Kate,
Jason,
Max, and Lainey.
Jason, Kate, Max, and Lainey. Okay, let's have brief comments from each on that question of C Rose. Jason with Kate on deck.
Oh, could you repeat? Just so, is it a matter of the form?
When you, yeah, I'm happy to. I didn't ask the question very well, Jason. So thanks for clarifying. When you read C Rose, you think, oh, this is a new kind of poem in 1912 or whenever it was written. This is a new kind of poem. It's only about the C Rose. It is not about large issues. It's not theoretical. It is not programmatic. It is just about the C Rose. It was so successfully about the C Rose that people immediately used it as a programmatic poem. And the question is, how do you read a poem now thinking, oh my gosh, this launched a program. It's a theory. It's also anti-Victorian. She didn't want the C Rose to be anti-anything. She wanted just to do a C Rose. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, totally. I was looking at I'm answering the question, but like a new poem I think that's in ModPo Plus is the Williams poem. What is it? The Flowers by the Sea.
Oh, I love that poem. Good example.
Yeah,
same thing.
It's a gorgeous poem. But they're like that. I actually think that poem that comes closer to what we're describing, what you're describing.
Yes.
But because C Rose, in a way, is the what it feels like it's trying to do is to get away from metaphor or
Yes.
but it's not, like, in order to really be as, I mean, it's almost like that poetry is, in a sense, trained us to look for more than there is.
Yes, exactly.
Even the way we
Overreading.
read in Mobpo, to kind of look for other layers embedded below the icing.
Good.
And-
All right, let me pause you there and let's go to Kate to keep the story going here. Kate, followed by Max on deck.
Well, in my office hour yesterday, we looked at this poem side by side with, I believe it's called Sheltered Garden, which is an HD poem in ModPo Plus. And Terry Talty for us stripped all of the I statements and the editorial statements out of Sheltered Garden and sort of stripped the poem down to something that looks a lot like
Interesting.
C Rose. And it was really interesting to see how when you strip out the I and the editorial, you have a poem that feels extra metaphorical and extra sort of statement heavy. So, she may be trying to strip things down to the thing in itself, but she's created this hunk in metaphor by way of doing that.
Oh, that's so perfectly observed. And the question becomes, can you ever have a poem that is simply anti-metaphorical, anti-symbolic, and simply a poem in which words are either pointing to things precisely, semi-precisely, not precisely, but they are all indexical and they are not metaphorical? Can you do that? The answer is probably no, which is why Imagism was such a failure ultimately, because they actually believed for 10 months that they could do it. And then that was in 1913, and that was the end of it. And Amy Lowell in 1927 was still pounding away at that. She kept putting out anthologies, Imagist anthologies, from 1930, and no one was doing it anymore. So that's the problem of any kind of programmatic poetry. I'm looking at Lainey, who has been in the poetry biz for a long time and has seen these kinds of movements come and go. Going to Max, but before we do, and Max with Lainey on deck, before we do, Chris, is there someone on the phone ready to talk? No, okay. Max, thoughts on this whole question? It's an interesting one.
Yeah, we had a version of this conversation in my office hours yesterday when we were discussing Flowers by the Sea. And we talked a bit about this tension that we see in these images, poems, between this desire for something like pure representation of an image free of any sort of extra connotation or value judgment, and then also, but at the same time, the difficulty that these poets have not to incorporate some kind of universalizing statement or judgment about the image they're trying to represent. And here in this poem in particular, I think you get that in the second stanza with more precious than a wet rose. Immediately, like HD is not content to just try to describe the sea rose. She needs to let you know that this sea rose is a more interesting poetic object than the wet rose single on a stem, the sort of more traditional rose, right?
Yeah.
And so she's advancing her program, but also immediately undoes what Imagism is supposed to do because she can't just let the image be.
Yeah, that's so well put. A quick question for you, Max, then we'll turn to Lainey. Can you name some other art forms that don't so easily fall into this trap?
That don't so easily
That do
fall
not
into
so
this trap?
easily fall into the trap of, oh, I read that poem and it's about life and nature and human resilience and shit like that. Is there another art form where you just don't so automatically go to those interpretations?
I think music and visual arts,
Yeah.
because they have different. I mean, their forms of representation are different. I mean, music is often it evokes, but without imagery.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
without semantics. And
Without
visual art-
semantics. I mean, it can do it. Matt. You're a musician. I'm glad you brought up music. It can do it. A certain kind of music can cause you not to draw large conclusions, but to listen to the tone, to the pitch, to the
Exactly.
volume, and get a feel for the sound. Painting is a little more problematic because if you're doing any kind of pictorialism, any kind of representation or anything that somebody can say, oh, I see a cloud there. And the painter
Right.
steps out from behind the curtain and says, no, it's not a cloud, it's paint on canvas. I love that whole problem of poetry because it's language, and we are sadly caught in language's denotative work that it does in the world. Right? So if you see green on the street, you think, I can go. But what if it's just green? What if it doesn't tell you to go or stop? Lainey, your thoughts on this?
Well,
Such
I
an
love
interesting topic.
what you're saying about music, and I thought about music immediately as well. And I think when we get into some of the later weeks, we'll see how language that's really sound before denotative meaning
Yeah.
we can
We can.
in language. So I had a quick thought about this poem, and then I wanted to just signal what's happening in the
Oh,
chat
I would love for you to
about
do
this
that.
poem. But
Yes.
my first thought is that HD cannot, whatever she makes spare, she can't remove her own preferences from the poem. So her
Subjectivity will out.
her preference for the wild rose as opposed to the cultivated rose, and all the connotations of conventional beauty with the cultivated rose, she prefers the wild. So even she's just writing about a rose, but even in just choosing the subject, that preference is there. And then there's some great stuff in the chat.
Yes, read some of it, please.
So Paul Kelly said, I think the sea rose is profoundly anti. The sea rose is superior to the cut rose and the spice rose. The poem is consciously structured as a critique. And then Suzanne says, I disagree about the sea rose. I don't think it's anti-Victorian. I think all of the levels of description are like Victorian ornament. And then
Ooh, wow, fighting words,
and
Suzanne Miller
then
from South Carolina.
talk about reading across intertextuality. Miranda Jubb writes, I was looking into the poet Callie Gardner. Al mentioned in a recent email. And by the way, we just did a poem talk with
about-
Ian that will be released sometime.
months from now.
Months from now. And she writes, and found a brilliant essay by them, Callie Gardner, on HD's Sea Violet. I would recommend anyone interested to read Very Modpovian. If anyone has the link to that essay and can stick it in the chat, that would be fabulous.
Yes, we'd love to have that. Miranda Jubb. We would totally love to
Thank
have
you.
that because I think we can add it. That's great. Sophia, we got somebody on the phone, but Sophia, can you add anything else in the chat stream that you think is worth?
Yeah.
They're all worth noting. but-
Well, CJ Prince said nice haircut.
To me?
Yeah.
CJ, you're behind the times. It's like 3 months old. No, 3
No,
weeks
it's
old.
not.
3 weeks old. Sophia DeRose noticed.
And Alana Best.
And Alana Best. Thank
And
you,
then
Alana.
there's also some conversation about what it means to choose a subject, and is that privileging a subject or is that an inherent critique of it? And there's some back and forth on that. Mark Cummings said, I find a strong image is a great launching pad for helping people understand the larger work, especially for those people who say, I don't get poetry.
Nice. Oh, you guys are so good. And shout out to all you guys. I mean, Paul Kelly, you're so active in this course. And every time I see your name, I think of Paul Kelly, who was helped us found the Kelly Writers House, the late Paul Kelly, whom we lost during the pandemic. So, Paul, you're there. I always notice your comments. And Suzanne, of course, and Miranda Jubb. We were just emailing the other day. And Miranda is trying to push those kids out the door to colleges and schools and things, and so that she can have more time with ModPo, which is so great. Okay, what I'd like to do now is bring someone up on the phone, and I'm going to ask Andrew and Sophia DeRose and Sophia Hall. Can we get a mic to Sophia Hall to respond? You have the mic. You're the mic holder. Okay, so let's respond to the person on the phone, Sophia, and Andrew. And I also want to make sure that Chris Martin sends Mona or arranges to get the address from Mona. You already did that for the book. Okay.
You can say all that stuff, all that nice stuff you just said about Paul directly to Paul, because Paul Kelly
Wait, this is freaky. Come
is
on.
on the line calling from Boston.
Hello, Al.
Hi, Paul. You're in
Hello,
Boston?
Al. Hello, everybody.
Good. You're in Boston, Massachusetts?
Oh, maybe not. Yes, I am in Boston now. We will head to Wyoming. Down to, actually, we're going to be in Pennsylvania a little bit the coming months, and maybe I will be able to get over from Harrisburg to Philadelphia.
Absolutely. There's a
and
really quick train
If I
from
can, I will
Harrisburg.
let you guys know. Yeah,
Please
just take
do.
the train over, and I'd love to be able to pop in for a webcast or something else.
We
that might
would
be
love
going
to
on.
see you here, Paul. Paul Kelly back in Paul Kelly's house. You know.
Yeah.
The slogan
The,
for this house, Paul, is it's in honor of Paul Kelly, the other Paul Kelly.
I know.
For occupation, the spreading wide,
For
my narrow
occupation,
hands.
This.
Yeah. Meaning occupy the house. Yeah.
Occupy the house. We moved from the North Shore into Boston to be near our daughter and granddaughter. And then we will be spending the winter in Wyoming to be near another daughter and her children.
How cool.
So
Great.
that carries us around.
So, Paul,
But
whatever
I'm
your
calling
question...
'cause Al, you make a big deal about the failure of Imagism. And I wonder whether you set up a straw man. But you sometimes seem to say that they prohibit metaphor, or it's as if it's a kind of aimed to be a sort of photographic objectivism. And I don't think that that's an accurate reading even of the manifesto or whatever. And Lowell, in what Dave put up, that longer essay from Amy Lowell explaining the things, she's very clear that this is no prohibition on metaphor.
Yeah.
But there's anyway. So I presume that there's something that you think is really critical about what you see as the failure of Imagism. And so I'm just interested in understanding more of that. Whether you think that they're to an extent you're using it as a rhetorical straw man for a particular purpose, or whether you think that it, just really that they that functionally or somehow they really did, miss the mark rather than in some ways opening up some possibilities that people didn't stay with forever, but who cares whether they stayed with them forever?
Paul, it's such a well-asked question. It's perfect, and And I'm only going to respond in 20 seconds and then turn to Sophia, Andrew, and Sophia, but really appreciate the question. So why don't you hang up, please, and listen to my answer, our answer, so we can have somebody else call. But please stop by in Pennsylvania, over from Harrisburg on your way to Wyoming. We'd love to see you.
That'd be great.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thanks.
Paul. That was Paul Kelly calling from Boston. Well, yes, Paul's right. It is a heuristic. It is a pedagogical ploy. I've never been known to use any such thing. It's a way of challenging people to say, can they get close to the precise, not just the nearly precise, but the precise choice of word? And it reminds us all, as we learn about this kind of poetry, that that is impossible. And so the imagists were very intense. I mean, H.D., Pound, Williams, in their own ways, were very intense about doing something different from late 19th century poetry, which didn't seem to care about word choice and just was very flowery. So instead of writing flowery verse, they wrote about flowers. And that's what they were doing. So it's a polemical movement which once in a while succeeded to fill out the polemic, to make it work. So I love it as a way for ModPo in week 3 to get started on the whole problem of modernism. Okay, so let's go to Sophia DuRose, then Andrew on deck, respond to Paul Kelly's comment.
Okay. I'm thinking about, in the Amy Lowell piece, she says something along the lines of that the imagists were more concerned with the manner of presentation than the thing being presented. And I think this speaks to the overarching desire for a clarity of expression within a precise language. Now, I'm not necessarily in a camp that believes that language can ever be perfectly precise, because I feel like it's always somehow circling the actual thing of the experience, because the experience is subjective in a way that a universal language and communication can't be across everyone. But I do think it's important to give credit where credit is due when it comes to the attempt to distill and render particularities of experiences of a particular subjectivity, because that's oftentimes what leads people to poetry anyway. Like this desire to clarify for yourself these intense abstract feelings, these intense abstract like ponderings. So I don't necessarily believe that all Imagist poems get the image precisely as the thing of the image, but I think the process and the desire to construct a distillation is important, and that can't be a failure ultimately.
Beautifully said. And any kind of anti-symbolic impulse, and we're going to talk more about this next week and beyond, any kind of anti-symbolic impulse can be ethical. It can be a way of saying, this has always meant that. It has always meant that for all kinds of mostly bad reasons. People symbolize because they reify conventional values. So the rose is kind of a neutral example because who ultimately cares? But, there are other things, like aspects of the description in poetry for hundreds of years of a woman's body. Williams was, for all his misogynistic flaws, in Portrait of a Lady, was trying to make a new portrait and challenge the whole question of portraiture by mocking symbolization of the woman's body. And so anti-symbolism is a good cleanup. It's a good cleansing. It's a good way of saying, you can't say it that way anymore. Let's try something different. So I think there's something to be, that's why I say it's heuristic. It's really nice to have a movement at the beginning of our venture, literary historical venture, through the 20th century into the 21st, by looking at poets who said, clear the decks, let's try it again. Williams in Spring and All, like he says, the Carpathian Mountains are there. Let's take them down. I mean, I don't know how he was going to do that. Let's just start over. Let's level the Carpathians and start something new. Ridiculous polemical statements of William Carlos Williams. But you got to like that impulse. So I totally respect it. Andrew and then Sophia Hall on this question that Paul Kelly raised.
It's a great question. I would also make a case for the persistence of Imagism and maybe even like the contemporaneity of Imagism and HD's work as it continues to haunt, for example, Bay Area poetics. Robert Duncan wrote a really famous, beautiful book about HD. I pulled off the shelf a really great book by Leslie Scalapino called Objects in the Terrifying Tense Longing from Taking Place. And I thought I would just read a few lines quickly, which I think pertain to what we're talking about. Actions in reality, as if at the same time, appear as the formal shapes in current writing. One's interiors feeding into a duality of the structure of the world and oneself. Occurrence isn't either. Occurrence is the jewel. Oneself's the jewel. The self is so small and beautiful that it can't merge. Its own inner rim compares to its rim. The bitter jewel is emptily peacefully in the structure. Now is vast negative in its own rim implied. HD wrote only in that level, never left it. So I feel like sometimes these like canonizations and groupings can like cover over the way that like things return. And I also think that that's just a beautiful set of sentences about HD's work. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm glad you put that into play. And also the HD book, which is a book by Duncan Hughes.
And we made a ModPo video on the very beginning of the HD book when we were in Chicago. That's
and
amazing.
That's in ModPo Plus, and I hope everybody will go to it. It's probably under the HD section in week 3, I'm guessing. I'm guessing it's there. It's easy to find. Enjoyed that very much. And what Duncan is doing is, in that part, Duncan is actually telling his own life story of his first encounter with HD. Andrew, it is such a great, powerful and moving thing to think of Robert Duncan, who felt very oppressed by his circumstances growing up and misunderstood. A teacher introduced him to HD, and he completely connected to HD, which is
it's so moving. And I thank you for reminding us about that book, because you can just open it. You can just keep reading it for your life and just opening it. I mean, you can read it from beginning to end, but you can just have it on your desk and just and open it. And
it's
also,
a gem.
Leslie, thank you for mentioning
Leslie
Scalapino, who we'll get to in later weeks.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you, Andrew. We're going to turn to Sophia Hall for a comment on Paul Kelly, but I want to signal to Dave Poplar to see what's in the subforum that's maybe worth mentioning. And also, I just want to remind say to everybody, I told people this before we went on the air, that I want you to stay tuned to the end of our 90-minute webcast, because I have a rant in me. I have a rant. So just to get you ready, Zach's like, another rant? You like my rants. I've got a rant, so it's going to be, and it's a rant that sort of signals large things about ModPo. So, okay, Sophia Hall, hello, my friend.
Hi, Al. Hi, Paul. I'm doing good.
Good.
Paul, when you say that Al might be setting up a straw man, I'm reminded of this quote I heard in 5th grade: fail, try again, fail better. And the Imagists, they were trying something new. They were trying something again. And while they may have, quote unquote, failed, which is not a bad thing, they did it better. They tried something new and they succeeded in that new thing. And we are pondering this question of, is Imagism a prohibition of metaphor? But when we look at Wallace Stevens' 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird, we have 13 fresh new images. I love that in that poem, he doesn't limit himself to just one image, and he just allows all 13 to exist, because that's how many there are in real life, and I'm sure there are many, many, many more that he could do. And then when we look at a more contemporary poet, Tanya Foster, we have the coupled haiku, where she shows the revision process. She shows all the images that are flickering through her mind, and she doesn't limit herself, which I think is the most powerful version of Imagism.
So well said. Snaps for Sophia Hall. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. After we hear from Dave, and maybe the two of you can look into the comment stream and add a few things. And Andrew, if there's anything happening in Twitter X, maybe you can add at that moment. And what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to ask Sophia to pull out to pull out little pieces of paper in the cup, and we're going to go a rapid fire. Anybody can just say what favorite poem or what poem you think is worth noting during this webcast from week 3. So anybody who's there, and then we'll go from there. We'll figure out what to do from there. Okay, Dave, Subforum, what's happening?
Suzanne Miller posted a question. She said it's a quick question about language, culture, and cultural influences. A number of the poets featured this week work Japanese forms and influences, if in untraditional ways. In the Plus syllabus, there's work by Japanese poets that's translated into English. While acknowledging that authors travel and are influenced by various languages and cultures, what is the demarcation line for a poem being in a course about modern and contemporary American poetry? It can't be language if we have translations. If it's culture, why write in a language other than English of an American experience? If poetry is open, why is ModPo American at all? Why isn't it just modern and contemporary poetry? Americans are certainly influenced by other countries and always have been.
Yikes. Yikes. Suzanne, thank you so much. We are going to take that question offline and discuss it somewhere because it's such a huge question. But I'll just comment as follows. I think we are not, I at least when we created ModPo, did not feel in a position to consider every possible poetic tradition respectfully and knowledgeably. So that's like the most practical answer. Secondly, I would urge everybody to go to that little section of ModPo Plus Week 3 to look at 4 or 5 or 6 poems and videos and discussions and texts in which Japanese poets of the later period responded to imagists who had specifically responded to Japanese poets. So that created a circulation that is very, and you'll see in some of the videos, is very fraught with cultural politics after World War II, when in Japan there was a pushback against the fascist regime in Japan of the 30s, which had been so nationalistic and xenophobic that it had basically forbidden modernism. So the post-war young poets thought, well, we don't want to come on like easy American allies, but we also want to push back against that tradition that was suppressed in the 30s. And so they reached back to modernism. In fact, there was a famous Japanese post-war literary magazine called The Wasteland, which is about as complicated a title of a magazine in Japan in 1948 as you can imagine. So we did want to dip into that kind of circulation with respect of the fact that the Japanese poets who participated in this were doing so somewhat in English, whereas the poets like Pound, who faked being knowledgeable about Japanese literature mostly, did not, of course, write in Japanese. So it's just a limitation. This is a good week for discussing our limitations. Sophia Laney, any thoughts from the scrolling comments you want to add?
Martin Porter wrote, a movement like the Images movement is just that, a movement, not a static, which I really like.
Movement, that's why they call it movements.
I also flagged that one. We have a quote from T. de los Reyes. When we get to Gertrude Stein, she will show us exactly how there can be failure in language. Aidan Hunt writes, is Imagism just realism or the search for verisimilitude like Dostoevsky's fiction?
Wow. Thank you, Aidan. And T, this is 10 a.m. is a perfect one for you because it's about 11 p.m. Where you are in the Philippines. So I'm glad we could accommodate you today. And lots of love to you, T. Andrew, is there anything on Twitter X?
We had a couple of interesting posts from Twitter user Ray Maxwell, one of which was a shout out to the fact that HD did a silent film with the great Paul Robeson called Borderline, which I have pulled up if you want to see her for 30 seconds, but I don't know if we can share your screen or if anyone cares, but HD film star as well.
Amazing. Like maybe stick the link in the chat on our YouTube. It's it's amazing. Everybody should see it.
And Andrew, send that to me and I'll post it somewhere for the ModPo people. That's great. Thank you, Ray Maxwell. holding up your end. Hashtag ModPo Live. And Ray Maxwell is always, since 2012, has been a significant contributor and also shaper of what ModPo is. So we totally appreciate you. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we have someone on the phone. What we're going to do is we're going to pick little pieces of paper from the cup, and those people are going to be giving us nothing more than a suggestion of a poem that we would want to talk about, a favorite poem. So let's bring in someone from the phone, and then we'll do that. Who is it?
I have just a few things to say real quickly.
You do? Chris Martin does?
Yes, nothing. This isn't a serious statement or anything like that. Just one logistical thing. I can only take one phone call at a time, unfortunately. So if you're calling and trying to get through it and it's busy, try again in a little bit, please.
Okay.
Number 2, Stanley from New Mexico called in, and he was shouting out Max's office hour. So
good.
Just
he called to talk to you to shout out Max.
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
Great.
So
thanks, Stanley.
And then most fun of all, on the line, Amber Rose Johnson.
What? No way.
Hey, Amber Rose.
Okay, bring up Amber Rose. Hi, Amber Rose.
Hello, my dear friend.
Oh, Amber Rose. Wow. Hey, are we going to go for a run in Montreal next week?
Let's absolutely go for a run in Montreal. That would be
good.
great.
Yeah, let's go up to that really high spot. What is it called, Elan? Mount Royal. Let's go.
Yes, Mount Royal, right behind campus. Maybe I'll bring my dog too.
Bring your dog, because I'm going to run a lot slower than that dog up that mountain. But yes, I'm looking forward to it. Okay, well, that's personal business. Hey, it's so great to hear from you, and we thank you in advance of seeing you for all the work that you and Lainey have done to coordinate our visit to Montreal. I'm so excited.
I am really so jazzed, and there are some real ModPo fans on McGill's campus, and folks are real impressed that y'all are going to be coming. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We made that cool flyer that you saw, which I'm going to share in the Facebook group in just a second.
Wow.
And I'm really trying to rally some folks together to give us a good audience, and I think it's going to be great. And for Stein Week, it couldn't get any better.
Stein in Canada, yes. Ambrose, I'm sure you had something to say, but would you stay on the line and do this game we're about to play to toss out a favorite week 3 poem when it comes around?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so who's first from the cup?
Elan.
Elan, get Elan the mic, please. Who's got it? Sophia Hall, you're falling down on the job. Okay. Elan, what poem do you just want to shout out?
I would say Between Walls.
Between Walls. Back
that one.
Wings of the hospital, where nothing will grow, lie cinders, in which shine broken pieces of a green bottle. How about that?
Fantastic.
That's post-stroke Williams. I can't do any other. Elan, what city are you from?
I'm from Montreal.
Oh, and you're from Montreal, and you're going to be here when we're in Montreal.
Unfortunately, yes.
You couldn't arrange a little trip up there? Because Zach and Chris have a spot in the van. We don't? Sorry.
Magda.
Damn, that's too bad.
Okay. Anyway, thank you for that suggestion. The Williams. Who's next?
Sophia Hall.
Sophia Hall. Favorite poem?
I would say.
Don't think.
Okay, this is just to say.
This is just to say. I'm not going to do it. You want to do it together?
No.
Yeah, he uses the word stolen. No, taken. Isn't it taken? What is it?
Forgive me.
Is it taken or stolen? Eaten. Worse. Okay. Ambrose, I'm changing the game. I want you, when everybody has tossed poems in, just for you to comment in any way you want about any of the poems that have been mentioned. Who's next?
Cole.
Cole. Get the mic to Cole.
My favorite was also Between Walls, but my second favorite was In a Station of the Metro.
You have 2? How do you get 2?
Well, I didn't want to repeat someone's, but that was my favorite.
In a Station of the Metro. Great. What do you like about In Station of the Metro?
I like how it, well, kind of based off of our conversation of anti-symbolism, and the anti-short story that we were talking about also, like, it makes you think about what you don't want to just assume it is, and like all the open possibilities.
Yes, open possibilities. Yes. I mean, if you don't realize that it took him months to get that down to that little nugget, and you think it's spontaneous reaction to an amazing scene in the subway of Paris, in the metro, you know, then you realize that poem is arguing for what might be called a right to opacity. We have a right to have a human experience that is, in that case, technological, the subway, and also natural. Just Paris has a way of surrounding those metro stations with lots of trees and lots of nature. So it has this kind of natural, urban, opaque quality. Like, I don't know what I'm seeing. I don't know what I'm seeing. And the likening, the analogy will be feeble, which it is. So we all have a right to have an experience that cannot be made clear, which is ironic given what he claimed for that poem. Okay, cool. All right, who's next?
You.
Me? I don't know. I don't know. They're all good. I would say the addition, yes, the addition of Tanya Foster's A Swarm of Bees in High Court, which brings the haiku back, and then, as somebody commented, maybe it was Sophia Hall, I can't remember who said, you know, by showing us the revisionism that's necessary for something so precise, you wind up defying simple imagism, if ever that existed, and showing that right to opacity we were just talking about. So it may well be that we're able to, in a few minutes, look at that poem or a little part of it. So, okay, that would be me. Who's next?
Oh. Me.
You. Does it say me on there?
It says Sophia.
Okay.
I'd say I'm also a fan of the Tonya Foster Swarm Beast in High Court. I really, really enjoy the coupling of them, the coupling of the haikus.
Ambrose, we're going to do one more and then just turn it over to you to comment in any way you like. And then I think Lainey is going to pose a question having to do with one part of this Foster thing. By the way, a P.S. I called Tonya one day, or maybe I saw her, and I said, we're putting some of your haiku from that book in ModPo, the Imagist week. And how do you feel? She said, yes, right on. Exactly. Good. Andrew, favorite poem?
I was also going to bring up the Tanya Foster poem.
Great. Okay, so we have that, and we have Ambrose on the line to say whatever you want to, and then Lainey's going to form a question about Tanya, and then we're going to go into, probably after that, we're going to go into final words and my rant. Stay tuned for the rant. Amber Rose, yes, there's going to be a rant today.
Okay, here are my quick fire 3 points. One is that I love Ray Armantrout's anti-short story, which I believe is in ModPo Plus for this week.
It is.
Yes, excellent.
A girl is running. Don't say that
say,
she's running for a bus. A girl is running. She's running. Period. Running. You figure it out.
All that aside.
All that aside.
Yes. Okay. Two is that this is just to say is only funny if you were the one who ate the plums. But for the person who was saving them for breakfast, I would be livid. That's what I have to say about that. And
sounds like you have been livid.
That is coming from experience of someone having eaten something that I was saving and really looking forward to. And my last thought and reason why I called was just to say again how excited I am to see you all. It'll bring me so much joy and like comfort and good vibes to have some friends visit. And I hope anyone who is close by in Montreal or in Quebec or in Canada, anywhere in Canada,
it's a
that
big
you
country.
will come and join us. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe we'll have a party in my office.
Yeah.
Party in your office?
yeah.
That sounds a little dull. Is there a better place in Montreal for a party than your
I'm
office?
down for it.
You're down for it. You and Sophia can drink a fifth of vodka in the
Don't
in the
tempt
office.
me.
Listen, we can put a little speaker in my office and it can get crazy.
Ooh,
No, there are
let's
better
dance.
places for a party.
Okay.
There are better places.
That's
for a
really
party.
great. Well, Ambrose, we are equally excited to see you. And the hug that I will offer when I see you, because it's been a few months, will probably wipe us out and not be able to, won't be able to run the next day. It'll be such a
It's gonna be
thoroughgoing.
elite. I can't wait.
Yes. Thanks, Ambrose. Lots of love. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was Amber Rose Johnson calling in. We're going to see Amber Rose in person, and so will you live 6:30 next Thursday. Okay, Lainey, do you want to formulate this question about the Tonya Foster haiku, and then we'll go around. We'll pick a few. Is there anybody left in the cup?
No, I put them all back.
Put them all back. Okay, good. So we'll
Okay.
get a few reactions, and then we'll get final words, and then the rant.
So I'm looking at the page that begins knots of a woman, Knots.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll read the question and then those two short poems, and then
We'll take
we'll
some
have
from the
some
cup.
responses. Yeah. Okay. So the question is, respond to want and knots.
The word want.
The word want and the word knots, which exists in two different versions in the two different haikus, Knots in the first and Nots in the second. Knots of a woman who ain't numb with want, who's not effaced by shut eyes. Knots form this woman who sugars her mustards, who'll want but never ask.
Wow. The first knots, let the record show, is Knots. The second is a noun, plural noun created out of NOT. Knots. Knots form this woman.
So the question once again is just say anything about the relation of knots and want.
Cool. Such a great question. Sophia, pick someone from the cup.
I picked Dave first.
Dave Poplar, any thoughts on this, please?
I get a real feeling of unrest from this pairing. Well, from all the pairings here, but it almost gives me that feeling like when you're about to sneeze but can't. It's like this perpetual feeling of uncomfortable, wanting to do something and not being able to, sort of a helplessness.
That's great, and that implicitly addresses the whole question of want. Great. Another one?
I picked Lainey next.
Lainey, do you have something to say?
I think I should wait and hear what other responders say and then respond.
Good plan.
Max.
Max McKenna, thoughts?
Yeah, this is tricky. I find the haiku form in general quite tricky for its incredible compression, and I think that this sort of pun on knots and knots raises these questions about constriction and negation, which I think are somehow related to the haiku form, but I can't quite fully articulate that. I think that this sort of interplay, right, between want, between desire, and then on one hand, and then this and sort of denial, negation, constriction, tying together on the other hand, I think says a lot, not only about the haiku form, but maybe, about the constrictions of form in general, like what it means to sort of push the boundaries of a form, to fill a form, to have form as a kind of field within which to work, a sort of set of constraints and restrictions, and then finding the absolute limit to which you can push it, to which you can express a kind of want.
So good. Thank you, Max. Fantastic. Who's next?
Jason.
Jason, thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this pair of haiku are just mind-blowing in a way in terms of what language can do. But we have even just, I mean, the way in which one, syllable, knots, is able to, it's almost by the spareness of that poem, it allows us to really focus on these individual words and think about like the immense kind of clouds, like active cloud, like electron clouds of meaning and possibility that they invoke. And not only are there homonyms, but there are, infinite arrays of definition, not only connotation, but even definition for something like knots. And is it, I mean, in a way, a knot, if you're a sailor, is a good thing. If you're not, if it's a muscle in your back, it's a painful thing. But it's also a kind of an abundant, like a knot is a kind of either a puzzle to solve, or it's a kind of abundance of intricacy.
Yes. That's amazing what you just said. So good. And the second knots form this woman, N-O-T-S, just really speaks to what you're saying. I just want to break the game because you were picking Al. Let's not do Al. I'd like to, since we haven't heard from Kate in a while, let's go to Kate and then back to Lainey for some general thoughts about this. Then we're going to move to final words and rant. Kate?
This poem reminds me of, or evinces Lynn Hygenia's statement that restlessness is made inevitable by language. I think that's from Writing as an Aid to Memory. I love, and this is sort of building on what Jason already said, but these very tiny poems are full of homonyms, homophones, verbs that act as nouns, vice versa. A want is both a desire and a lack. There's almost a endless qualification to these poems where it's like, no, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant. That's not what I meant. This is what I meant, because the language never comes to rest. There's always something more that it is saying that the poet isn't quite in control of.
So well said. And I just think that Tanya needs to be applauded for taking all the tools and strategies and ideas about language that one can be involved in a poem and putting it into a teeny-eeny form, doing all those things, including a practice that the language poets with whom she's contemporary and maybe younger, and definitely younger generation, perfected, such as questions, almost aphoristic questions like, who's not effaced by shut eyes? That's so brilliant. And that's an Erica Hunt strategy as well, exactly. And I love that idea. Lainey, your thoughts in general about this, and then we'll go to final words.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to all who responded and kind of a quick synthesis and then my own reflection. I'm echoing Dave's word on rest, Max talking about constriction, negation, and a form as a restraint, Jason invoking multiplying the associations of all the words in addition to the punning, and Kate, thank you for bringing Hygenian into the space, who's much on our mind. And when you were talking about I couldn't help but think about your book that has I mean, which I'm not remembering which book, because you have so many books. Is it called I Mean?
I think, isn't it?
It's fabulous. Everybody should read it. And
I mean.
And then my additional adding to what everybody has already said is that one of the paradoxes is that this poem in a way is about listening to one's own thoughts, even when one doesn't want to, listening to others, trying to carve out some mental space to rest. But there's a paradox in this listening and careful reading from the speaker who isn't able to ask.
Thank you, Lainey. Thank you for raising the question. It's really powerful. Hope everybody, if you haven't gotten to that in this week's syllabus, please do. All right, we're going to do final words, and I'm just we're going to abandon the cup and go this way. We're going to start with Dave and Kate on deck. Final thoughts.
One quick observation on Imagism. I don't know about whether Imagism failed or not, just because I don't really like the concept of failure or success being applied to art. I mean, it can be, but I just don't really like it. So it's almost, to me, more like an experiment, like when synthesizers were used in music in the 70s and 80s. I mean, they were really cool, and they are very distinctive, and they're very associated with that period, but it's not like we hear them all today. People can still use them, but it was just sort of an experiment, and it is what it is. Also, my office hours, just a shout out to those, which are Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and they're early in the week, so don't feel any responsibility to have actually read the stuff, and especially this week, since we're doing Stein coming up, which is always difficult. So feel free to come by and just lurk or discuss things, but don't feel like you need to even prepare.
Thank you, Dave. As we turn to Kate, just a little plug for week 4. So week 4 often coincides with our trip somewhere. It also coincides with, as we watch the graph of people who are actively involved week to week, it drops, woo, bunk, because of Gertrude Stein. I don't think Gertrude would appreciate that. Gertrude would not appreciate that, because Gertrude thought of herself as the most coherent poet who ever lived and wrote. And we kind of agree in a strange sense of coherence. So cheerleading, who's going to cheerlead Stein? Let's stay with Stein. Let's do it. Week 4 is it's intense, and we will help you. As Dave said, early in the week, come to an office hour. We'll get you through Stein, and it's gonna be so interesting. By the time you get to week 5, you're gonna think, oh, I needed that Stein. The only thing, to quote Ashbery in relation to Stein, the only thing worth writing about is the thing that cannot be written. The only thing worth doing in poetry is the thing that cannot be done, and that's Gertrude Stein. So, okay. Kate, followed by Sophia DeRose. Final thought.
I want to build on what Dave said, which made me think when we say that the Imagists failed to do this thing they put out there, sometimes we speak of these poets, as that they were naive. But I just want to, put out the value of an impossible goalpost to bang your head against, which I feel, is what a lot of the poets, in modernist times we're doing. We're just, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing if they could eat it too. And I also wanted to mention Wallace Stevens, just because we didn't anywhere else today. And, I'm all about 13 Ways. And that poem is full of inflection and innuendo, as he mentions in there, which is, to a large degree, anti-Imagist. So, these manifestos seem reductive, but I think they're games too.
Yes. Kate, I know you're going to be visiting us at some point. What week are you visiting us? Do you remember? 7, 8?
It's in November. I don't know which.
Anyway, Kate Colby is going to be coming hanging around with us. But I would also suggest, Kate, that you ditch the kids, ditch Providence, and get in the car and come here for tomorrow's class, because we're actually going to meet in person, and we're going to talk about 13 ways of looking at a blackbird, aren't we, guys? I think.
There are 100 ways I can't do that.
There are 100 ways? Oh, okay.
Only
But
100?
speaking of one of the 100 ways you can't do that, there's a poem in your new book. Do you have your new book nearby?
I do.
Good. There's a poem in this book that is kind of about your son, speaking of one of the reasons you can't leave. And it's called Dude, and I wonder if you would read it on page 12 for us.
Sure. I think I did this last week too. But I'm always happy to.
Well, we can stop now if you want.
No. Here's Dude. According to my son, there are 3 main defensive structures: refuge, fortress, big ditch. You can take out a plane with a pen light, and there's diamond rain on Uranus. A number can contain countless commas, but only have one period. Finger in the slat on my arrow slit. He will never again have not existed.
He will never again have not existed. Oh, I love that. Thank you, Kate. Final thought from Sophia, followed by Andrew.
I think I'm just gonna plug my office hours, which are 8 a.m. on Wednesdays. 8, yeah. Maybe a little bit early for folks on the West Coast, but
maybe.
Sorry about that.
I would say definitely.
But I'm awake at 5 a.m. So if you're also awake at 5 a.m., join me. I just want to give a little shout out to Mona and Barbara and Jane and Vijaya and Anthony who joined, and Api, who joined me this morning, and we had a great discussion about Imagism. And I'm looking forward to a post from Api soon about Imagism as a reading practice.
Yeah, Api, get it together.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Is it still the case that Api is traveling from Prague to Montreal?
Yes, hopefully, yes.
Okay, people, if Api can go from Prague to Montreal, you can go from Boston to Montreal, you can go from Toronto to Montreal, you can go from Cape Breton Island to Montreal, you can go to from Vancouver to Montreal, right? See us there. Cool. Thank you, Sophia. Andrew, followed by Jason. Final thought?
I was just having a lot of jumbled thoughts about like excess and lack and minimalism and infinity as we move from Imagism to Stein. And I feel like, the notion of intensification as another axis that's not just like presence or absence, but intensity is really interesting to me. I was thinking about that today.
What a perfect setup for next week. Thank you for the transition from this to that. I mean, for some people, a rough transition. So thank you. Jason, followed by Max. Final thought?
Sure. One thing I want to recommend to everybody is if you have a chance to go into Mobpo Plus and read the excerpt from Spring and All, not the poem, but the couple pages of text. Right. And I think that's something we might, if we can, look at in my office hours tonight at 8. And just to read 2 sentences, which I think are really important in thinking about the images and thinking about moving into Stein. So this comes off like an aphorism, but it's in the midst of a lot of other surrounding texts. Just says the only realism. So this is Williams saying the only realism in art is of the imagination. It is only thus that the work escapes plagiarism after nature and becomes a creation. And so we can see the Imagism, we can see an echo of that in imagination, which is a curious kind of Tanya Fosterism.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, Williams was one of the earliest people to flip the terms of realism and imagination. Yeah. Right? The only thing that's real is the imagination. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a tradition in Western philosophy of saying that, but not as cool as Williams at that point. Thank you. Spring and All.
And in a way, Stevens, that also is like Stevens' thesis.
That is his thesis all along, and I'm a big Stevens fan, as everybody knows, but so boringly later in the 1930s and 40s, he kept saying, the only things that are important are realism and the imagination. He kept using those terms interchangeably. All right, Max, final thoughts, then Laney.
I'll cheerlead Gertrude Stein. If only, not because I only have one reason to cheerlead her, but in the context of this week, I think what Gertrude Stein does resembles the experiment of imagism in several ways. And it sometimes appears to try to do imagism by other means, meaning it tries to make language into painting. It tries to turn language into matter. It tries to depict things, images without the baggage of connotation, without semantics, and it's quite brilliant when it does that. I hope everybody, or folks who are new to Stein will maybe approach it with that lens and get something out of it. I also want to plug the European Time Zone Meetup group, which meets this Saturday, September 21st at 4 o'clock Central European Time, which is 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Zoom. Check it out on the forums if you want more information.
Thank you, Max. ETZM has figured out the timing. It turns out Central European Time is perfect for ModPo around the world, as it turns out. So you guys are in the right spot. And Saturday is a great day to do it, because if it's 10 a.m. here in the east of the U.S., you can join. If either you're working in the garden, or you're, we're going shopping, or doing the laundry, or you're joining the ETZM. Max, how's Berlin today? Good? Everything okay?
The weather is incredible. We have this late summer spell right now, quite warm, sunny, dry. Arguably almost too warm. But I'll take it. It's better than cold and wet.
Somebody the other day who's visiting Berlin wrote me and said they went to a restaurant that I had suggested, Otto, O-T-T-O, on the east side a little bit, and everything came back about the extraordinary experience that we had in Berlin. So, highly recommend. It's complicated place to be, but lovely. Thank you, Max. Lainey, final thoughts.
Yeah, two things. First, thinking about the failure of Imagism, it's really easy in hindsight to say that, but at the same time, we're still reading the poems and talking about it. But more importantly, we're looking at one moment in the long lives of many of these poets who went on to do lots of interesting work that wasn't Imagism. So just pointing to that. And then a little Gertrude Stein cheerleading in our chat on YouTube. Paul Kelly writes, 3 cheers and more for Gertrude Stein. T writes, man, Gertrude Stein changed my life.
Oh, T.
And Emma Goldman Sherman writes, Gertrude Stein is the most brilliant mind we have as far as I'm concerned. And finally, although it goes on, Al Pascal writes, Gertrude Stein is more coherent than Ginsberg, in my opinion.
Al Pascal, that's a new name to me. Is that a pseudonym for somebody we already know?
I don't know.
In
Tell
case
us.
not, Al, great name. Al Pascal. I mean, what the fuck? I wish I were Al Pascal.
You can have a pseudonym.
Will you call me Al Pascal
Sure.
from now on?
No,
I have to reread my
okay
Pascal
with-
to make sure it's okay.
If it's okay with Al Pascal.
Well, he's the original.
Al
Al Pascal is the
second.
original. I'll bet you anything his name is like Al Scheinbaum or something like that. It's not Al Pascal. Magda, what? Al, that's Alva. Oh, we know Alva. Al, who's here? Oh, Al was here. Okay, hi, Al. Yeah, that's fine. That is very cool. Not that if it wasn't that Alva, how do you know that?
I was
Magda?
there last week. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm being ridiculous. It's what get with no sleep. Okay. My final thought, which begins with a non-rant, and then the rest of the time is the rant. Okay. Dan Bergman is going to be visiting us and sitting at the table. And I think when we get back from Montreal, so October 2nd. And I'm very happy about that. Dan and family will be traveling the night before and joining us. And Dan tried his hand at a Dickinsonian poem this week, and I will read it. It's quite amazing, and it's definitely written. It's Dickinson filtered through Dan Bergman's own experience. The world is like a catalog. The leaves turn in my hands. The fragments offered up for sale, unkeepable as sands. But sometimes what I see makes sense. I swear that this is true. And suddenly I know my mind because I'm near to you. So that's Dan Bergman. Yay, Dan. Okay, and now for the rant. I noticed about 6 months ago that in the Coursera platform, suddenly they launched a tiny little AI-ish simple translation bot, of which these things exist. They exist all over the place. No big deal. And my first thought was, oh, that's so great, because we have a lot of people in ModPo participating in this free, massive open online course who could use help with, translating English to English. I think it's inherently a weird thing to do, but it will work. I mean, if somebody writes something that is unclear, maybe it helps to click the button and have it translated into English. I'm not actually sure. But it looks like a kind of the beginning of a launch of AI tools that help people in these open online courses that are global and multilingual. And then I realized that it doesn't say translate to English every time. Now, that may be changing to my friends at Coursera who are watching this morning, though it is early out there. That may be changing, but for now, and when I first noticed it, it only applied the translate to English option when it thought that what you were saying needed translating into English. Yeah, it's not universal. So I played around in June. I was just playing around with this thing, and I posted some things that were incredibly conventionally coherent, and it didn't offer the translate to English option. Then I wrote a version of something we say all the time in this course, which is how you say what you say is as important as what you say. In fact, how you say what you say is maybe more important than what you say. The how of what you say is the what of what you say. And guess what? It offered the option for people to translate into English. But I wrote it in English, and it is a fundamental tenet of a course on poetry hosted by people who write English and require no translation in order to be understood. And then I sat there and I began to stew, which is these days not so hard. And I began to think about the implicit bias against non-conventional, non-standard humanistic study and talk, where something that is seemingly innocuous and unopinionated, a tool, turns into a judgment about what gets to count as coherent. And most of what gets to count as coherent is not what we talk about in this course. In fact, the whole course is set up to cause us to think about the words we use and not require a translation into a conventional way of saying it, such that all the spikiness and interest of what we're saying, because what we say is as important as what we say, and the little translation bot, which is perfectly innocent, I suppose, and wasn't thought of by the Coursera engineers who were just trying to help people, winds up eviscerating the whole point of our course, which is to encourage non-standard responses to non-standard poems. We would never have a translate to English option, let's hope, on a text of a poem by Gertrude Stein. However, if you typed out the Gertrude Stein poem in the discussion forums, it would cause us to translate into English, and that will be a lot of fun. We should start doing that. I raised this point in the forums the other day, and I won't say who, partly because I just can't remember the name of the person who did it, but a really interesting person that I've been in correspondence with about this posted to say basically that this person is a software engineer in ModPo. Active, not retired, an active software engineer, 2024 software person, who wrote and said that there's no such thing as a platform that is not opinionated. And specifically, this person said the Coursera platform is one of the most opinionated platforms out there. And that really taught me a lot. There's no such thing as not having an opinion. There's no such thing as a venue for a global conversation like this that isn't going to be subject to I would say, anti-art and anti-humanistic biases, even to the level of little tools that are meant to help us. That is the end of my rant. We are incredibly grateful for 13 years of participating in this experiment, and we do it. We plow forward. We have all kinds of methods, like what we're doing here is not at all on a platform. Yes, it is. It's on YouTube. There's no way. And there's some opinionated aspects of YouTube, obviously. So we're all subject to these things. Wah, 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 whine, 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 complain, complain, complain. But I happen to have the microphone, so I thought I would do it. Thank you to everybody for participating. Mona from Indiana, get in your car, please. Paul Kelly, stop by. The great state of Pennsylvania, the most important state in the United States of America for another 50 days. Pennsylvania, stop by, please. Paul Kelly, Ambrose Johnson, so much love. Can't wait to run with you and hang out with you in Montreal. And to everybody else, Max, Kate, Andrew, Jason, Dave, as always, Sophia DeRose, you're the best.
Thanks.
You did a great job pulling names out of a cup.
Anytime.
And I still don't understand why it says what it says on that cup, but
Didn't
she
you pick this
believed
cup?
she could, so she did. So she did. Translate that into English. Oh, yeah! Do not! And Lainey Brown, thank you. What's funny? You know what you need to do, Sophia? You're working on the clock and you report to me in your job. So I say to you, I want you to go upstairs and find The Wizard of Oz and watch it for the next 2 hours. Because, Sophia, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Heard.
Lainey Brown, thank you for everything you do to coordinate this whole project. It's an amazing thing. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. And Zach and Chris and Magda, we're very excited about you guys getting into a van, cranking up the music, and driving to Montreal. If anybody sees them, I think Mapo people should line either side of the highway, the New York State Thruway, waving as they go by, parade. And then they get there and they do all this technical magic. And it's hard to imagine we ever loaded that up and put it on planes and went to Scotland or London or wherever else we've been. Montreal sounds a lot easier. See you all. Gertrude Stein, Stein. Take care. Have a nice day.